Boxing Truth here. Wanted to talk a little bit about Adrien the Problem Broner and how his career has materialized ever since he turned pro. He's had a rather weird career in boxing. Also, if you do some research about Adrien's amateur career, it's very strange as well. It just doesn't really add up to the success on paper that he's achieved. And the success on paper is what it is. That's what exactly it is. It's on paper. But if you look deeper into the accolades, the 4 world titles that he's collected, he has to be regarded as the worst 4 division champion in boxing history. I mean, just going by the top of my head, yes, he's a 4 division champion, but it's very weak. Very weak list of names that he's defeated. He was also gifted a couple of belts in his career already, so it's when you add it all up, it's just not impressive. I mean, who he beat for those belts? You have to look back. And the first belt he ever got, it was a gift. He was given that belt by Al Heyman against an unheralded fighter from Argentina. His name was Vicente Rodriguez. You never heard of him before he fought him, and you never heard of him again after he fought him. That's the type of opponents he's been fighting, Adrien Broner. He fought an Argentine guy at 130 for a WO strap vacant belt, knocked him out. He was a nobody. He fought a bunch of nobodies in Argentina prior to that fight. A bunch of guys with losing records. Then he finally fought Broner. Then his very next fight, he fought Eloy Perez. His first defense, and Eloy Perez was a prospect coming up. He never fought again after that fight. Got stopped in the 4 rounds. Had some problems with drugs going into the fight. Was all messed up emotionally. Had a lot of issues going into the fight. Got stopped. Never fought again after that. A lot of hand-picked opponents from Adrien Broner's career. It's just, I mean, he's been a creation of a hype job from HBO. I mean, this is going back to the days when HBO was Heymanized. Heymanized was referred to a lot of writers back in 2011, 2012, 2010 as the Heyman Boxing Organization, because Heyman was able to use his influence to get a couple of his hype jobs like Adrien Broner and Andre Berto to fight on HBO against pedestrian opposition, pretty much hand-picked opponents that they can look good, but weren't type of opponents that deserved title shots or even belonged on the main event of an HBO. But hey, Heyman had his influence. He was able to get things done. That guy can get what he wants. And Adrien Broner received that favorable treatment early on in his career from Heyman. Got gifted a belt as junior lightweight. Moved up in lightweight and finally fought a live opponent. Probably the only live opponent he's beaten at for a belt, and that was Antonio DeMarco, who was still a real fighter at the time, was still in his prime, wasn't as faded as he is now. He was still a top fighter, definitely, and it was a good performance. He looked good, stopped him, dominated him. It was, to this day, it still remains his best performance. However, more showcases and more soft touches continued. He fought Gavin Reese after that fight against DeMarco. Then he moved up 2 divisions, which didn't make sense, but at the time, Broner's handlers, they were trying to make him into the next pay-per-view guy. They were grooming him, so he needed to move up to welterweight to fight the bigger names in order to get some pay-per-view status. However, it just didn't add up because he didn't fight the type of opponents at 130 or 35. Didn't even bother to stop at 140 before jumping to welterweight to start fighting some bigger guys at welterweight. It didn't really add up because this is a guy who struggled mightily against Daniel Ponce de Leon on his first HBO appearance. A lot of people thought he lost that fight. Only watched a few rounds of that fight. Never really watched it completely. But I saw Broner getting pressured and backing up, and the majority of the fight got outworked like he usually does in a lot of his fights. And he was barely able to escape with a decision win. But he jumped up 2 divisions, struggled, went life and death with Paulie Malignaggi, won a strap at welterweight, got it a split decision by the skin of his teeth against Malignaggi. Close fight. Malignaggi outworked him, probably landed more punches, but there was just nothing on him. At the end of the day, this is not amateur boxing. This is professional boxing. Damage matters. Landing the bigger punches matter. Well, that's my criteria. I'm more impressed with guys that land more damaging blows instead of guys that land touch jabs and slaps on their opponent. I like fighters that do damage and land big shots. And Broner was able to land the bigger, more flashier punches. He didn't hurt Malignaggi, but he landed the bigger shots. And I thought he barely won the fight, but it could have went either way. It was that type of fight. Malignaggi outworked him a lot. He landed more punches, but a lot of slaps. And then he fights Maidana in a fight he was supposed to win. He was a big underdog. I mean, he was a big favorite. I believe Maidana was as high as a 10-1 dog, maybe even more than that. I don't even remember. Maybe 7-1, 8-1. But he was a significant underdog, and Broner ended up getting his ass whooped. Got knocked down a couple times. He fought well. He fought well at times in that fight. He actually had a little comeback in the fight. Was able to gain some momentum, land some big punches. I haven't seen Broner punch that hard ever since this fight. He lost something that night. He was punching a lot harder in that Maidana fight than he's ever since that fight. He hasn't been looking that strong. Hasn't looked that sharp. Hasn't punched as hard ever since that Maidana fight. The Maidana fight took something out of him psychologically, mentally. And you can just go by the opposition ever since that fight. A lot of hand-picked opponents. He fought a bunch of fringe contenders after that fight with Maidana. An embarrassing loss for him. He fought Carlos Molina. Manuel Taylor, okay fighter, but fringe contender, not a world beater. John Molina, not a world beater, fringe contender type. Can give you rounds. He's just a gatekeeper type opponent. And then Heyman matched him with Sean Porter in a fight that really didn't make sense for him. But Heyman did give Broner every advantage to win the fight. He was able to get Porter to come down to a catch weight. Mayweather was backing him, was all in on Broner at the time, was training him. Provided him, he was training at his gym, all the stuff. I mean, the whole Heyman team was pulling for Broner. They all wanted him to win. Mayweather wanted him to win, and he didn't do shit in the fight. Held on for dear life. Tony Weeks appeared to be on the payroll in that fight. He pretty much, it took all that holding and fouling for Tony Weeks to finally say to take a point off Broner. But I mean, look what it took for Weeks just to take a point off him. I mean, all that holding and the fouls he was committing, and he only got 1 point taken off out of all the antics Broner showed in that fight against Porter. Disappointing performance. Didn't even appear he took the fight that seriously. Didn't appear to be in shape. It was just a dull performance. And then he got gifted another belt against Khabib Al-Haddad. He was in his hometown. He had every advantage. He was fighting a guy coming off a 1.5-year layoff, hadn't fought in a long time, and it showed. Khabib just wasn't sharp. The timing wasn't there. His counter-punching ability wasn't on point. And the the layoff had an effect. But I give Broner props for stopping Khabib. He'd never been stopped before, and uh, he is a pretty good fighter. But that was prior to the Jesse Vargas fight. After that fight, I thought he beat Vargas, but nothing happened after that fight. He lost his regular world title and never fought again after that until he fought Broner, which is like over a year and some change going into the fight of inactivity. So it's not the best scenario to fight a guy with, who's got some speed and, speedy guy like Broner coming off a 1.5 year layoff. Not very ideal. And that's been Broner's career. 4 world titles, two belts were gifted against not the best available competition. The only live opponent for a belt he fought was Antonio DeMarco. Got a very close fight against Malignaggi. Struggled like crazy in that fight. Some people thought he lost. Malignaggi, of course, felt he won. At that time, he wasn't pro Heyman. Even was saying some stuff about the judges after that fight, saying that one of the judges were bought, and now he's singing a different tune ever since he signed with Al Heyman. That's expected, of course. But Adrien Broner's career is now that he has a world title now again at 140 pounds, the question is where is he gonna go? There's really nowhere for him to go, because there's really, he was gifted that belt. He didn't even deserve the shot at that title. The WBA ended up bending their rules. They leapfrogged Adrien Broner over Jose Benavidez, who's been the interim champ for quite some time. According to WBA's rules, he was supposed to get that shot against Khabib for the WBA title that Broner now has. He's been promoted to super champion now. But Broner was being mentioned, of course, as a opponent for Pacquiao a couple months back before Pacquiao ended up choosing Bradley. But now Broner's going to fight Theo Payne, and it's a major L for him. This is a fight that ain't going to do nothing for his career. It's not going to raise his profile. It's just a fight no one's excited about. And, of course, the boxing media hasn't shown much enthusiasm about this fight, because you go from being mentioned as a possible opponent to Manny Pacquiao to now fighting Ashley Theo Payne. And it's a fight nobody cares about, and that's why it's not really being reported like that, because it's a big buzzkill from potentially maybe being in a big fight to now a fight no one cares about against a hand-picked opponent. A guy who doesn't even deserve a shot at the title. Theo Payne is 35 years old. He's from the UK. He's been fighting a bunch of nobodies the past few years. Guys with 500 records. Guys coming in with 5 straight losses. The only step up he's taken in the past 3 years was against Cesar Cano. He ended up losing a split decision. His highlight reel is that he gave Danny Garcia a tough fight, losing a split decision about 5 years ago. And that's it. He's done nothing ever since. Fought Cano, lost. He's fought a bunch of guys with losing records. And now here he is with a shot against Adrien Broner that he doesn't even deserve. And what's another funny situation, and of course Al Heyman's influence has something to do with this. Just recently, as a month ago, Theo Payne wasn't even ranked by WBA. And now, if you look at WBA rankings, he's ranked number 15. Of course, Broner, now the WBA super champion, has to be fighting guys ranked in the top 15 of the WBA's rankings in order for the WBA to sanction that bout. So Heyman pulled some strings, probably bought that ranking for Theo Payne in order to be ranked by the WBA. Now he's ranked number 15, so now the WBA can sanction that fight. And There's no problem for Broner to fight Theophane now because he's ranked now by the WBA. Very laughable. Theophane's ranked 76 according to BoxRec. What has he done to earn a top 15 ranking in WBA? It is what it is. The rankings are what they are. They're subjective. Rankings can be bought. Rankings can be manipulated. And of course, money guys will always get the go ahead on. They'll always get the jump on rankings. If you make a bigger purse, you get a good ranking, and that's why Broner was able to. He was able to leapfrog Jose Benavidez for his shot at the full world title because he makes bigger purses than Jose Benavidez. So of course the WBA is gonna favor with Broner in the situation. But it's a strange career for Broner so far. I mean, if you look back to his amateur career, over 300 wins, 19 losses, but no accolades. He won the silver gloves title, once in 2002, and no international experience. Never won the national Golden Gloves. I mean, there's really nothing special about Broner's amateur career, and if you look at his pro career, it's been carefully guarded. You know, he's very selective opponents, especially for world titles. I mean, who was he beat? DeMarco? Mahanaji? A lot of people don't feel he beat De Leon. And now he's talking like Floyd Mayweather now ever since he beat Khabib, saying that he was going to fight whoever he wants to fight. And does that mean he's going to cherry pick for the majority of his career? Because that's what it seems like. I mean, who's he going to fight? He ain't going to fight he's not going to fight Pro Stall. He's not going to fight Crawford. Those are top-ranked fighters. Heyman and Bob Arum situation. So unification fights are not going to happen. The fighter that holds the IBF, unknown guy. Can't even pronounce his name. So if he's not going to unify, what's he going to do? Cherry pick from the top 15 of WBA rankings? Who's next after Theophane? Ricky Burns? And who's next after that? A Khabib rematch? So a lot of questions to be answered about Broner's remaining career, because I really don't see a path of a big fight for Adrien Broner. I see a lot of cherry picking in his future, so he can build his record up. Because look, Broner's a very beatable fighter. His defense is not good, doesn't let his hands go. He doesn't have the best. He doesn't use his. He doesn't really use his boxing ability. He likes to get in there and land some shots. He's a better puncher than Mayweather, but he's not as good defensively, and he doesn't let his hands go. So there's a lot of flaws in Broner's game. He can get beat by a lot of fighters between 140 pounds and 147 pounds. So you have to matchmake Adrien very carefully for the remainder of his career, because another loss and he'll be. That could be end of the road for him. I mean, how you gonna build him up after another loss, especially depending on who he loses to as well. So, this disappointing fight for Broner upcoming on April 1st. He went from Mr. HBO to Mr. Showtime to now Mr. NBC and to Mr. Spike. So jumping from network to network, no set future at the moment for Adrien. No big fights on the horizon for him. Probably more cherry picking on the way for AB. This is Boxing Truth. I'm out.